Hey, peace and blessings to you. My name is Jerry B. I am the entree musician, and so are you. And so is this seasoned soul brother sitting to the left of your screen. Now, you may not know his name right out because I'm going to introduce him in a moment, but you do know Tower of Power. You do know Deep Purple. You do know Michael McDonald. You do know Kool The Gang. You do know Steve Lukather and Kenny Loggins. And this brother right here has been the secret sauce on guitar for all of those bands, not to mention replacing Lowell George in Little Feat. This is none other than Phil Brown, and we welcome him to the Entree Musician. Brother Phil, what's happening, man? How are you today?
I'm very happy to meet you and see you in the flesh. It's just fantastic.
Man, I can tell that by your breath of music that your spirit is that big, and I hear it. Let me tell you, we're going to get into some great conversation, but let's start this way, because you've played so much music, you've been with so many bands, you've really took over the direction sonically of Little Feat. What is the greatest lesson do you feel that you've learned in your musical career? Let's start with that question.
I have an answer to that. It's what you leave out. It's what you leave out. It's not what you play. Excuse me.
That's great.
Life is pretty interesting. But I learned that at a young age. I'm classically trained on violin from the age of six years of age until I was 13. And I picked up the saxophone to be in the band because there was a girl that had great legs. Sharon, wherever you are, God bless you.
That was your motivation? That was your motivation?
That was one of my, just to sit next to her and play the sax, because she just had a way of, well, you know how it is, we're guys.
Right.
And she was a great friend of mine. And then the tuba player got sick and I took it over. In 10 days, I was playing some shows with the junior high band. I remember Mr. Burdick made an announcement. Phil Brown just took up the tuba 10 days ago. Let's have a hand for him. The place just went nuts. And it was more than boom, 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 boom. I just love low end. Yeah. Still play with that today. I've been a guitar player since I was 6, and I'm 71. So I've basically played my whole life. Wow. I wrote a lot of hit songs for a lot of people. Everyone from Pat Benatar to Steve Perry. To yes, Little Feat. That was an accident that happened. Yeah. A friend of mine that was from England had befriended Jimi Hendrix when he had come to England. And years later, we met at a club called the Troubadour, Doug Weston's Troubadour, a very famous landmark in Los Angeles. Yeah. And I got a chance to play there, and I played with these two guys, Jan Uvina, who was Steve Vai's drummer, and Jimmy Haslip, who played with the Yellow Jackets. Jimmy played left-handed, upside down. We were great friends. Anyway, we played my Mahavishnu meets Jeff Beck, Little Feat kind of thing. It was a hybrid. I could sing and play. Couldn't sing metal, but I wrote a lot of songs for those bands. Big hit for a band you might have known called Kix on their biggest selling record called Blow My Fuse. I understand they sold more than 1 million records, close to 40 million. But what's famous in the music business, part of this story is going to be, I wrote a lot of songs for a lot of people. Cher. To this day, I've never received one dime from any record company or publishing company. I was signed to 2 publishing companies, Warner Brothers, in 1983. And then in 86 to 88, I was signed to A&M Music. And if you were the artist, I would meet with you, but never with your manager. And the reason that is because you got a story you want to tell, and it takes about 10 years to put a record together. I don't know why that is, but you talk to anyone that's done anything, they don't go get a record deal the day they're out of high school. It just doesn't work like that. There's so many things to take care of. And writing, I could easily surmise where you wanted to go. And I usually wrote your first couple of hit songs. Happened for a lot of artists. The other day I was tabulating. I have about 81 hit songs, some that appeared on records, but many singles. A lot of girls cut my songs. I guess the reason that is because I would write songs. The guy might have done her wrong, but I had the attitude, you know what? You done me wrong. Let me tell you what, blankety blank. I'm going to go find someone 100 times better than you. And the girl would. And there was a lot of girls that said, I've been waiting for a song like this my whole life. I put up with a lot of stuff. And guys do that too. So I always wanted to make something big,
Wow.
bigger than it was. And
let's go back for a second. And you know, with respect to not receiving any publishing, what was the, you know, I'm trying to make the correlation with the first question is what you leave out. I mean, was something left? I know what you leave out musically works, but
I didn't have the
contract as to why you didn't receive.
Yes. The contracts were normal contracts at the time, very draconian. An example would be there's licensing fees and record sale fees. Record sales are considerably less than licensing fees because licensing means you can go all over the world with it. I had songs that were hits like this girl, Doro Pesch, huge metal singer. I wrote her first single with Adam Mitchell. Adam Mitchell was a singer-songwriter that was in a band called The Left Bank. Let's Walk Away, Renee. It was a big hit in the 60s. And we met and became instant friends. And we wrote songs for tons of people. Ace Frehley,
yeah,
the guitarist from Kiss.
Sure.
And we would sit down, and a few minutes later, the song would be done. And I can't tell you how many times I get a call from the Phil, can you come down? The artist wants to meet you. This happens so many times. I just love artists, and I want to give them the best they got because the record company isn't going to. It's basically a big scam. I'm putting Warner Brothers and what's the other company? Universal. They stole my music. Out and out stole it, never paid me a dime. Even though we had contracts, I didn't have strong enough lawyers. I didn't make very good choices in business. I never have. But I know how to write a song. I can tell when it's not real. And I usually get a call 1 minute to minute, Phil, we're in trouble. Help us. Phil, help me with the song. And of course, it's something I'm working on. Mm-hmm. I wrote a song with Eric Kaz, who wrote songs for Linda Ronstadt, and great friends. He wrote a lot of songs for Linda Ronstadt. And one day we wrote a song called Love Me Like You Never Did Before for Kim Carnes. She did Betty Davis Eyes. Right. And the producer was very famous, Val Garay, at his studio in Los Angeles. So I went down there. I should add, I was a year sober. This is 1985. And she heard me sing. She goes, would you mind singing on this record? Freaked everybody out in the room. Next thing you know, I'm singing a duet. We're singing on the same mic. She said, are you okay with this? I said, you betcha I am. Go and sing your butt off, girl. And she did. She had a great voice, great personality, amazing husband. She was just incredibly talented. And the song was the last song for her on EMI. She did great. Another song that I got called at the last minute was a band called Kix, K-I-X. Huge metal band. Wrote songs about girls with big chests and short skirts. And wrote a song.
Rock and roll, right?
Thank you very much. And they were good. And they had 2 guitar players. It sold millions of copies. And I mentioned this to you earlier. I have never seen a dollar from any record that I've ever portrayed. I've called every record company. I've called all the publishers who told me to go get a lawyer. I've been through at least 25 lawyers. And now it's the press. I'd love to get a groundswell of people that said, where's Phil Brown's money? Yeah. They estimate that I earned over $100 million with the songs that I wrote for people. I've never seen a dollar. So for over 50 years, I've worked for nothing. It really ticked my girl off because she's really smart and smarter than I am. And I just couldn't cross the T's and dot the I's. I didn't know how, but I knew.
I had an interview I did last year with a drummer named Raymond Calhoun, and he was the drummer, touring drummer, and recording session drummer with the Gap Band. And
hang on, you mean Moon Calhoun?
Moon Calhoun, but no, this is Raymond, the drummer.
This is also the drummer that played with the Gap Band too.
Well, he never identified himself as Moon. Could be. We did 2 interviews together. He never referred to himself that way. However, the point of bringing him up was because he wrote the smash Outstanding, which is it's like a national anthem for the Gap Band, and never for 40 years got a dime from it. And then the interview that we did was when he was able to secure all of the royalties from that song. So,
I'm gonna listen. I know Moon very, very well. Blonde hair, kind of a slight figure. He was not heavy set.
No, no, this gentleman is different. I'll send you the link, and you guys
I'll
who are
look for it.
watching this can see the link. He is a very heavy brother, and you know, I mean, he's like a monster.
I know of this guy. So
Yeah.
wrong. His last name was Calhoun too. He played with a bunch of people. He also played with "Tell Me Something Good"
with
Chaka Khan, Rufus and Chaka.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I've heard of that name, but the gentleman that I interviewed, he, like I said, he never referred himself to that. That's neither here nor there. But the celebration and the reason for me bringing him up was the fact that he was battling for 40 years and finally got his royalties. So you're right in putting the pressure on the press and not shutting up and making sure that if your songs are worth $100 million, you know, you should get at least half of that.
I should get all of it, and then fine. Yeah, for crying out! I love you, Jer. Thank you. Listen, you've done more in the last 5 minutes. Thank you.
Well, I'm just
so I did that.
Encourage you, man. That you know, 50 years without getting
not a dime, and you can still hear this stuff on radio, television, film. I did a lot of stuff, and I'm still doing it today. I've got a new record in play. I was telling you before we started our interview, I have this band, you know, of the Jimi Project, where I took some Hendrix songs,
right,
and it's got a taste of Tony Bennett, David Bowie with some English guitar players. Hendrix, of course, Jeff Beck, the guys that I grew up with. I just wanted to be around somebody good. Yeah. And I think if you're a human being, you want to make it the best you can be. That was my deal. Still is today. Anyway, I still sing, still play. I don't play with the pick. I actually have a Hendrix bottom that I play out of that made in 1965 that Jimi owned. Yeah. A friend of mine sold it to me. He passed for drugs and alcohol, and I've had that cabinet sitting in my bedroom on a milk box through an old Marshall head, and I'm just having the time of my life still playing. I got these three brothers playing with me. One of them's Larry Thompson, a drummer that played with, believe it or not, John Denver. Rocky Mountain High, all those incredible songs. Anyway, he was a black drummer, still is a black drummer around my age. It's just a beautiful thing, and he just knows how to play, and it's fun to sing with a guy that knows so much. Absolutely. I was telling Jared a story about Ella Fitzgerald told that drummer I mentioned to you, what's his name? That he was too busy, and she couldn't sit down, and so they have a thing that's called a 4-bar. Boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. So on the back end, you'd have the double kick drum, and that allowed her to move. And I have the same thing. I need this too. A lot of the influences I had were black. Yeah. Because they just knew how sports figures that were just amazing. I never had that. Well, he's not white. I don't want to talk to him. If you're good, I want to know about what you're doing.
Exactly.
That's the way it is. And I've traveled all over the world, seen a lot of stuff, and people, well, Phil, how do you do that? I said, I'm not doing that. That is doing me. That's my feeling. So I'm a man of faith, just like you. Anyone else that loves the Christ, I say, go for it. You got nothing to lose.
Word out.
So I put this new band together, and the bass player I work with is a guy named Brent Anthony. He's from the Upper East, Chicago, Detroit area, and he played with Smokey Robinson and also played with hang on, I got to ask my girl this. I mentioned another singer that's important. Hang on, let me ask. Sorry, guys. All right. Dada, give me the name of that singer that I always forget. Luther Vandross.
Oh, Luther, yeah.
He's got some heavy stuff. Anyway, we ended up in a club together in Denver, and he got up on stage and kicked the other guy up stage. I want to play with this guy. Yeah. And we ended up playing and became very good friends. And then I'm just sort of hanging around, and I've had a really good friend. You'll love this. Jimi Hendrix's cousin is Ricky Hendrix, a great guitar player, singer, songwriter, etc. And he had a band together, believe it or not, did 4 records, 2 with Buddy Miles and Billy Cox, and 2 with Mitch Mitchell. I never met him then, but I just thought he was terrific. That's the closest I'm ever going to get to Jimi Hendrix. So we're talking the other day. He just called me out of the blue and said, hey, bro, I'm putting this band together. I want to do the Jimi Project. You're doing the Jimi Project? Everybody wants to know. The Jimi Project is a record I put together with Jimmy Haslip, the bass player from the Yellow Jackets. Oh, yeah. He plays left-handed upside down. I've known him for almost 40 years.
Yeah.
almost 50 years actually.
Yeah. He's one
And
of
the
my
drummer is,
heroes.
yeah, it just a really sweet man. He goes, Phil, what do you got? And I said, well, I put some demos together, my favorite Jimi project. You want to do it? And so a couple of days later, it was the drummer's Gary Novak. Gary played for years with Chick Corea. I
Yeah.
think he was 17 or 18, kind of like the Miles Davis story with Tony Williams.
Right.
So I grew up with these guys. Anyway, a couple of days later, they loved what I did. It was not the normal Jimi Hendrix. So if you like David Bowie and you like Tony Bennett, because I loved the Rat Pack and all that, how they sang,
Exactly.
I got to do that.
Wow.
And the record has been just a smash. We play it and people just go, how did you do that? And I said, that is doing it. I'm not doing it. God, whatever you want to call it, because Hendrix was just, we didn't get to keep him very long.
Yes.
I wish we could have. So the closest I'm going to get to Jimi is his cousin who plays. So we put this band together called Apaches from Paris.
Mm.
It's a name I've had for a lot of years. We're going to be making a new record. All the guys are great, but none of them are writers. I'm a very disciplined writer. I had some of the best guys in the world allow me to be myself and show me what not to do, which is to leave some big holes. You know, whatever you leave out really counts. You know that too, just because you're a musician and an entertainer. They ain't paying you enough to play everything, you know.
And then what made you take the leap from the violin to the guitar? I guess it's not such a huge leap being.
It's not at all. Could I have been really good? I probably could have, but I wanted to write my own music and I didn't know how. I remember being about 12 and studying with the teacher, and I thought, I'm not doing very good at this. I couldn't read very well. I wasn't disciplined, but when it came to hearing my own songs, which I didn't know how to write, I had an acoustic guitar when I was a kid and had to learn chords. My cousin Terry showed me about 5 or 6 chords and I was off and running. And 3 weeks later, I'm playing in 5th grade in front of the whole glee club, most beautiful girls I ever seen in my life. I've been chasing that feeling my whole life until I met my girl recently, well, 10 years ago anyway. So there was not a big jump. I still love violin playing and I have that type of phrasing and stuff when I play. It's always like that. I don't play with a pick. Haven't since I was a little kid. Go ahead, ask whatever, interrupt me anytime you want.
No problem. I just wanted to know how did you take the leap into that? Because I mean, you know, there's such rare you know, artists who really rock a mean violin, and that's something maybe you can bring back into your music, you know.
I've thought of it, but I just don't think I was good enough to do it. I'll give you a story that's a true story that happened.
Yeah.
I read about it in the Atlantic magazine. It was several years back. Itzhak Perlman, the violinist with polio, came out with his wife in front of Zubin Mehta, the incredible conductor that's now back in New York. He was in Los Angeles for years. And they used the New York Philharmonic. And they filled a night at Avery Fisher Hall, which Little Feat sold out a couple of nights in a row. And I was fronting the band because they had lost Lowell. Right. You can't replace Lowell. He was one of a kind. But for some reason, they wanted me because I could sing and I could write. And tremendous band. And Lowell had already passed. That's how I joined the band. Anyway, getting back to this, they did a show that had been sold out for a year. And everything from, you know, that heavy metal guitar player that wrote a lot of stuff for a lot of the metal guys listened to him. I'm trying to think of his name. He's Italian. I'll think of it in a minute. It'll come to me in a moment. Anyway, they played and it was a 3-hour show. 3 hours, believe it. And here's a guy with Stradivarius with polio, and he walks to the front of the stage with his wife, takes off his knee braces. And so the way I'm facing you on the left, that's the way he was facing Zubin Mehta. And they began this piece. It's only 7 minutes long, but it's some of the most histrionic violin playing you ever heard in your life. A lot of guitar players have tried it. That guitarist from Sweden, very famous, white player, scallop neck. I can't think of his name at the moment. Yes, Yngwie. Anyway, he plays, but not like this violin player. And they finished playing the show. standing ovation for 45 minutes. People were just swooning. It was so incredible. The guy that's writing this, I'm starting to tear up even as I tell you this because it was so emotional. His wife helped him come to the front of the stage. So he's holding the violin in his right hand and leaning on his left arm is on her shoulder. They come to the mic. Itzhak wants to say something. And so he looks at the audience and says, first of all, I want you to please stand and give a standing ovation to Zubin Mehta, the finest director and conductor I've ever had the pleasure to hang with. And he said something, a little off-color word. I don't know how you took my blank, but I can't thank you enough. What an experience. Place goes ballistic. Itzhak grabs the microphone again. He says, and then secondly, I want you to give yourselves a hand for being the greatest audience I've ever had the pleasure to perform for. And how you took my blankety blank is beyond me. And the place is just laughing. It's like shaking your jewelry in front of the rich people. You just don't do that. And finally, he wants to say one more thing. He comes to the office and finally, I want you to give yourselves a hand. You're the greatest audience I've ever performed for allowing me to do what I did. And I gave you a lot of stuff. He used that word again. Yeah. And he got a standing ovation. I want to do that. I want to learn how to do that where I can give the best of myself without an expectation. And as far as go ahead.
Though, Phil, that one of the cuts that I heard from you doing Purple Haze on acoustic guitar was like, okay, come on. I mean, you got to tell me about that. So I think maybe you've already done it. Maybe the audience wasn't the same, but I've never heard a version of Purple Haze on acoustic before. So I
pretended. Listen, there's a little story. There was a huge influence in my life. As much or more than Jimmy was a guy named Peter Green from a band called Fleetwood Mac. Yeah. I loved his songs, but there was an approach he had. He had 3 guitar players, Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, and there was just something about this guy that was way out of the ordinary. I don't know if he respected Jimmy. I hope he did, but I was touched by that. And so I had an acoustic and I wanted to do something. And I thought, I got asked to play at a very famous place in Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. Name escapes me, but there were quite a few people. It was sold out. And you could have heard a pin drop. That's how quiet it was. And I remember finishing that. There's a collection of 5 songs. You guys can get that. It shows me playing live acoustic guitar. And I played these songs. And I played basically a verse and a chorus of every song. I got If 6 Was 9, You Got Me Floating, Purple Haze, Love or Confusion. Yeah. Some of my favorite songs. And the reason they were my favorite, because they made me feel immortal. When I hear something good or see something good, I feel immortal. Yeah. And that's what Jimmy did to me. And easily, I would add, it's always good to be vulnerable. It's the only game in town, being vulnerable.
That's right.
Anyway, that song came out. I remember finishing it, and there were easily 1,500 people there. I signed so many signatures, sold a lot of CDs, and they made it's on YouTube. You can find it. Looking under Phil Brown, there's a lot of Phil Brown stuff there. Right. And it'll show 5 songs, and it's at this pretty famous place. And there were a lot of entertainers there from Oklahoma City that came to see us, and they chose not to like me at first. Who's this upstart think he is doing Hendrix? Well, that was changed in about 15 nanoseconds. Nobody left. It was really funny, and I just loved them that they treated me like this. I had to prove myself again, and I played through an amp, through an acoustic guitar, and I had an octave divider and a little funny sound that made a kind of wobbly sound when I play guitar. So it wasn't electric, but it was acoustic.
So if you could describe Hendrix in one word, how would you describe him?
Immortal. I would say immortal.
What about Jeff Beck? One word.
Also immortal, but in a different way. He's got the English immortality, where Jimmy was international. Yeah. And I've been a fan of Jeff's since the Yardbirds. If there are any comparisons, I apologize. Mm-hmm. He was just such a tremendous influence. And I think to myself, okay, there were a bunch of guitar players from England, besides Jimmy Page and Eric Clapton from Cream,
Mhm.
To this day still kills me. What a long, illustrious career. Can you see me? Oh, there it is.
Yeah, I could see you now.
Pete Townsend from The Who was probably my first really big hero. I'd never seen anyone play with that kind of reckless abandon. I love The Who, Keith Moon, and
Yeah.
I thought John Entwistle. When my generation came out, to this day, I still get goose pimples a mile high. I should tell everybody, I'm from a town in New Mexico called Los Alamos.
Hmm.
They made the atomic bomb there. The president of the town's laboratory was his wife was my music teacher. And there's some press that came out. She unleashed an atomic bomb on the music world. And some of you are going to run into this playing where people are jealous of you.
Mhm.
That's just part of it. Anyone that's good usually gets this. It's the mark of passing through something, a passage of rights.
Sure.
In my opinion, that's the way it is. And you're never going to be good enough to be the best. I'm not. There's a lot of guys I like that are really. Joe Bonamassa, I think, is terrific. There's some great guys. Steve Vai, terrific. It's not my style,
Mhm.
but I still respect them for what they've done, and they're a lot more famous than I probably ever will be. Nevertheless, I wrote a lot of songs for a lot of people.
Yeah.
There's a song I wrote for Cher back in 1980 called 88 Degrees.
Hmm.
We had a fling for a hot minute. She's a great girl.
Yeah.
And then cut her song, and the record is called 88 Degrees is on. I have to ask my. No, I won't ask. Anyway, they re-released the record on Rock Candy, which is a label out of England, and they put her picture on the cover. And I cut this record with a bass player, a top studio player that played with. You remember the name of the Spanish guitar player, Jose Feliciano? He was with him for years.
Yes.
And this guy, Trey Thompson, his name, he can play. Oh my God, he can play. You don't meet many guys. You ever meet someone who could really play that turns you want to stick with them no matter what.
Exactly.
Because their star shine is married to yours.
Mhm.
And there's only a few people that do that in life. Only a few. The kids today, I just love a lot of the kid bands, and I love that they love Zeppelin and Cream and all this. But we had one thing, and you and I did, Cher, growing up, where we had Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters. And I just recently found out that Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf, neither one of them had anything to do with Rollin' and Tumblin'. That was from an obscure black blues guitar player from New Orleans who didn't get his due. It's one of the songs I have. I have a couple of records out that you might get a kick out of. You can find Cruel Inventions.
Cruel Inventions.
Cruel, Cruel.
Yeah.
And inventions like you're going to make an invention of some kind. Imagine this is another record of mine. And who's Steve Lukather's, he said it was his favorite record because he's finally put out a great record. And Steve is another wonderful guitar player.
Yes.
Stick to the guys you love, but also try to find the people that are not that well known. I'm one of them. I'm not telling you to do it for me, but do it for yourself because I hear things.
Absolutely.
And if I hear it, that means you can hear it.
That's correct.
And that's my opinion. And try to find someone old like me that's been doing this for a long time because we know tricks you've never even imagined.
Yeah, certainly.
I want to revisit this.
Well, tell me this, Phil. What type of advice do you normally give to young players who are just coming into this industry? They could be
All
a
right.
guitarist, or they could just be any type of entree musician. What is the first piece of advice you usually give to them?
This, don't try so hard.
Hmm.
Men, as a rule, try too hard. We're always compensating for an imagined lack. We're not full of lack. We're full of goodness. It's so good, it can't be contained. You see this a lot with young ball players. I made a comment about this earlier. The great ball players. I remember when Jackie Robinson hit his first home run, I was screaming. I was going, whoa! You don't see this very often. And then he became one of the great players of the game. And of course, everyone finally had to let him in because he was too good to ignore.
Exactly.
Be good enough to be better than you imagine yourself to be. Don't settle for less. You're not good at it. A lot of people have challenges with this. I understand. I have some young students that study with me by phone. I actually show them through Zoom, or I show them through just the phone. With Ricky, he's not all set up at home, so we just listen. So I played him a song of a famous English band that I put to a famous Michael Jackson beat. I won't tell you the name of the song, but I'll sing you the riff. Okay, you know it is Billie Jean.
Right.
My friend Michael McKinney, the bass player, wrote that riff and wrote that song. Michael Jackson didn't write a lick of it. The lyric was done by his brother. And I'm not against Mike. He was supremely talented, but didn't have anyone to help hold him down. And everybody needs that. That's another thing. Take your time. There's a lot of guys that play really fast. The only problem is that they don't leave enough time for me to evaporate with the music that's disappearing. Now, that's just my personal take. When I listen to an old black blues player, I just revel in the fact that the guy's doing something that nobody's ever done. White players don't do it as a rule. Although I love Les Paul, there's some incredible players that came out. But majority, I look for color in the music. I look for it. Doesn't mean that I'll find it. And when I see it, it's usually an after effect. You understand? I played through an old Marshall, a 1965 Marshall cabinet that Jimmy owned. I also have Robin Trower's original 810 cabinet. It's an overlarge Marshall cabinet with 8 10-inch speakers. It came with a 50-watt top. Yes, I have tons of vintage stuff. I endorse a lot of stuff because I can. Be careful about your endorsements. Another thing, you want to do it because someone wants to give you a guitar. Who cares about that? You're better off getting a guitar from your uncle or your grandfather. Here, take this. I played this. Right. Older is not better. It's just older. And you're going to have to learn how to play with yourself. Remember, it's what you leave out. One day I'm playing with, I won't tell you who the player is, but it's a famous story. I'm at a club in West LA, and I'm with a group called the West Hills Drum Club. Mark Cranny played with Gino Vanelli and Jean-Luc Ponty, and who else was there? Chad Wackerman, another incredible drummer. It basically was a drum club and 3 drum sets on stage and 3 guitar players, guitar A, guitar B, and me. And the guys all could do that, hammer on stuff and, with the vibrato and all that. And I don't ever do that. I should mention this. Never try to ace another guitarist. It shows you're not mature. And I'm talking about the kind of mature, everyone looks at you like a grand old, it's not a grand old dame, but there's the female part of you that's really musical. You want to let the other guy breathe, even if he's not as good as you. You're going to come off like a god. And that's the whole idea, because music is not competitive. It's cooperative.
That's great. That's great.
Really, I've had this since I was a kid. And I'm really good at this. Can I smoke them? Yeah, but what's the point?
Right.
How do you walk away feeling good about yourself when you hurt somebody? Most people are insecure to begin with. And when you act like a god, you get that due. That's in short supply on the planet anyway. So I'm there. And of course, we're playing this song. And they're playing, doing all the stuff they're doing. And Phil Brown's going to do something, gentlemen. And I looked at the bass player, great with these 3 drummers. Can you all just make a groove? And I want to do it to this. So we did this Michael Jackson groove. I took a very famous song from an English band that was a tremendous singer. And I began singing to it. And often when you're playing, it only takes 3 notes, basically 2 notes, but 3 notes if you really want to go to Mahavishnu land. And it's what you leave out of those 3 notes that make everyone go, holy. How are you doing that? And you're not doing it. It's doing it. And you let that happen. So here I am. And the club only holds about 700 people, but there's over 3,000 people there who pay $10 a piece to see these drummers. And they're all the top. Vinny Colaiuta was there. He played. Anyway, they're all looking at me and they're waiting. And we give the drummers their shot first. And they played some amazing stuff. And I'm sitting there with just my hands on top of the guitar. And I'm watching these other 2 guys play. And they're playing their little rear ends off. And finally, one of them, so Phil Brown's got to get up and play something for us. I said, gentlemen, can you play this groove? So they did. And then I looked at one of the guitarists, Phil, what do I play? He says, play the rhythm with me if you want. Or just do the chunks, like R&B against this. And everyone's going, whoa, Phil, what do I do? I said, whatever the heck you want, but leave me room to sing. So the other guitarist, very famous, was playing a little much. And I said, give me a little room to sing and then fill in, okay? He said, okay. And the key of is this stays in A on the bass. Boom, 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 that kind of thing. And this bass player has got the groove of doom. You just go, oh, I want to be in a band that does that.
Right.
The front is filled with this 75 girls in the front, all line dancing to this. It was simply phenomenal. And I'm singing, I went down and sang the rest of this blues kind of thing. We got to the chorus and they let me have it. I said, the turnaround is going to be A, G, D. And the rest is in A. So I got a guy playing the clips you do in an Arabian song, another guy playing kind of between the lead, and me, I'm just playing the rhythm. And we got time to solo. The drummers had already played theirs. And so both the guitar players do a 5-minute, ooh. And here's the best thing. I got them to get real quiet. And remember, we got this groove, boom, 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 boom. And I go up real high and I play. Smear. That was it. Standing ovation. Place erupts. And one of the guitar players gets on the mic, Phil Brown, you make me so mad. He was quite a bit more vocal than that. I've practiced for years to do this. And I laugh for him and I said, and it shows. How did I do? He says, amazing. Everyone's laughing. I get off and the guitarist comes up. He said, am I doing something wrong? I said, quit doing all that nose candy. I was sober 5 years. I said, you're too good to do that. And eventually he did get sober. He still plays great, still does that. He's in a very famous band, but he never forgot that. He said, you didn't humiliate me. I said, no. He says, you elevated yourself by playing a nursery rhyme. Everyone could understand it. I said, well, I hope they could. I threw a little Mahavishnu and Jeff Beck thing at the end. He says, no, that sounded like you. Anyway, I'm telling you this story that you don't have to try so hard. Yeah. Could I have gone up and done that? Do I play that kind of thing? I can, but I'm not good at it. It's good to take your best step forward. Yeah. Another thing it's easy to forget when you're a male as an entertainer or just being a male is we all try too hard. All of us do. Even that incredible basketball player, which is Michael, help me, would do he would almost turn a somersault where he made a setup at the basket. And you're like, I don't know how that guy does this, but that's an act of God I'm watching. Look for the best. And that's what you'll become. And that'll happen in your life from the way you eat, the way you digest your food, the way you, it's just an important thing. Don't settle. Don't mess around. Make sure that you're serious. Your grandfather didn't mess around, and he raised you as a grandson to be the best you could be. You represent this older generation, and you represent me when I come see you. You don't have to play everything you know. No one is paying attention. They'll only pay attention when you start skating with your soul. That's my opinion. Enough of my proselytization.
That's a great opinion. I've got so many questions to ask you. I appreciate your time that you've spent with us, but tell me about your association with Kool The Gang.
Well, I was at a studio doing some wiring in Los Angeles, and there was this good-looking black dude, tall, thin, and I thought, isn't that the keyboard player for Kool The Gang? And he was demoing some songs. And they had a couple of guitar players come in, and my friend who owned the studio said, hey, Phil, you want to do a session for George Brown? I said, from Kool The Gang? He goes, yeah. I got a guitar. You want to play it Strat? And I said, yeah, let me mess with your guitar for a minute. So I did. 5 minutes later, I was done, and he gave me $500, which is more than I was making for helping to wire the studio. I said, you want to work with me some more? And I said, yeah. I got a studio down in Marina Del Rey. Can you be down there tomorrow? I said, what time do you want me to be there? He says, come at 1:00. I got there at noon, and I spent until 1 a.m. with them and did a lot of demos. So I've been on a lot of Kool The Gang records. George told me a story. He said, we had a big single and you did this solo and nobody gives a hoot about what I'm singing or what the singer's saying. They're all mentioning about the guitar player because I use a tremolo and it's set to where I can have the tremolo go down to an octave E below the normal tuning, and I can pull up the high E to like an F sharp or a G. So I'm good at this, and it's going to sound a little like Violin. He says, you did that dive bomb. And it comes back perfectly in time and in tune. Again, never mind, how do you do that? And of course, there's a couple of white guys in there. Says, that's Phil. You're going to be back here tomorrow. And I got ready to leave. And he said, no. I need you here the rest of the week. $2,000 enough for you? I said, well, I'd like 10. He laughed so loud. He said, well, we'll see if we can work out. So we became instant friends. He is just one of those kind of men. Great man. Yeah. And we've been friends for a really long time.
Yeah, Kool and the Gang have their roots in Northeast Ohio, where I'm from. And so that's, in the early 70s.
Yes. Yeah. They're also, listen, their relatives are also, because all the jazz guys, they're related as cousins from the Commodores, Ohio players are all related to each other. They're all related to Kool and the Gang too. Yeah. Kool is a great guy, just a great person. They put together a fantastic thing. And I remember going to a concert in Austin, and one of their big songs was, name me a couple of hits and I'll think of it.
Tell
me again, Dada.
70s or 80s, because it was a different Kool and the Gang in the 80s than it was in the 70s.
Yes. They had a new
Ladies' Night.
Yes. And all those songs, you'd see a bunch of white guys dancing who were so uncoordinated. I spent so much time laughing. Well, let's see what you could do, Phil. And I knew how to moonwalk. So that was my dance. I got some things that I do because I'm not really a dancer, although I can. But there were some great songs, and still are. I think they're made, even since they lost their horn player. Yeah. And that was the change for the whole band, because he was a big part of the heart and soul of the band. Let me shut up and not give you such long answers. Ask me whatever you want.
That's quite all right. Tell me about your association with Kenny Loggins, because he's one of my favorite songwriters.
I got asked to come to an audition, and I went in, and this is it. Those great songs, Michael McDonald songs, all that stuff. Oh, yeah. And I've been a fan of Kenny. So they asked me to come up, and they drag up a half a Marshall, and their guitar player's going to quit. He sort of plays like Larry Carlton, who's just an incredible player. And if you're anything like me, I like the original. But this guy was really good. He was not comfortable after my warm-up, because I did this Mahavishnu riff, and Kenny said, wow, we're going to do This Is It. You know that? I said, yes, sir, I do. We played it, and it had more of a Jeff Beck style, English style to it. Not that American pseudo jazz thing. I'm not being disrespectful. Sure. When it's pseudo, it's pseudo. I'm not a good faker. That guy came up and got his guitar back on and took his gig back. And I went outside, and Kenny he said, you need your own record deal. I said, it's not likely. They just want my songs. So my girl's here. So Dada, I told Jerry here about the royalty situation I had. So they all knew it. There was some incredible players there. Trisha Bowden playing drums, ended up playing with Chicago. They all knew me. I knew them too. It would have been an entirely different thing with Kenny. Yeah. And man, that boy can sing. And he looked at me, he said, you serious? And I said, yeah, I'll even play the melody with you if you want. He goes, show me. The whole place went absolutely ballistic. There were probably 40 people in the rehearsal listening, and you could have heard a pin drop. And I wasn't there to show off, but he was asking me to do something. Yeah. So if you ask me, and then we've been friends, we didn't work anymore. It would have been probably too much for me with him. Although Jeff Beck would have sounded great with him, but I would too. So I just love him. He's great. Michael McDonald, you mentioned him. Yeah. I've known Michael since I was in St. Louis back in 1969. He was in a band called American Blues, and they did Beatle covers. Of course, he doesn't sound like the Beatles, but who cares? Played great keyboards. So we did a thing where he and a bunch of other great entertainers were down in Los Angeles at some venue, and we raised money for homeless veterans, because a lot of guys are really disturbed after their war experience. You can't blame them. Weapon, go kill somebody. And I never was inducted into the Army, although I got a really high draft number. I think my draft number was 256, believe it or not. Whereas my brother got a draft number of 13. My dad got him out of the draft because of Los Alamos. Tons of people I've met. Nathan East, amazing bass player.
Amazing.
Everything he plays is golden.
Yeah, absolutely. He's rock solid. What about your
Yes.
association with Tower of Power?
Oh, I've known them since the early 70s. And then there was a record I did with a singer named Willie Daffrin. Willie had a band called Abrupt Edge, which was the title track of one of my instrumental songs called Fill Her Up. And I've known Doc and Emilio for many, many years because of the Record Plant Association, a recording studio.
Yeah, sure.
And they ended up recording on this record. I hadn't seen them in years, and I was such a big fan. Great guitar player. Just loved all those guys. Their drummer, original drummer they had, almost joined Jimmy Haslip and I in a band. But his wife was a Christian, and she was afraid we would take him to the to the wrong place. We might have. David Garibaldi. What a player. Just a thing that nobody really had. What else is there? Ask me about anybody else you want.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, we've spent time talking about your associations in other bands. I want to ask you about two of your songs. One you recently sent me, which the riff is just addictive, and that's the song called Manic Depression. So tell me about that song a little bit.
That's a Jimi Hendrix song. And it started.
Oh my goodness! I gotta do my homework.
It's all right.
That was just the riff on that was just dynamic.
I took that song and it said Manic Depression. You would seem down. Old Jimmy's dum 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 dum, and I went, my God, I gotta slow that down. So I did da 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 dum bambi dooby dum. Something slow hit me, and it's very sexual. The whole thing about Jimmy's was, he ain't gonna get any better than me, and I wanted to do that. So it's one of the first songs. The first song I arranged on the Jimi Project, you'll hear "You Got Me Floating," which came off of Axis, which is my favorite record of Jimmy's. Something made me stop time with that, and I put that whole record together. It took 5 years for me to do that. Purple Haze was part of that 5-year progress because everyone's used to dum 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 dum, and I'll add a little thing. That became the head of the song, like a jazz tune. When you heard da 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 bum, it came in the middle of the song. It was great in the beginning. I'd never heard anything like that. True story. I'm in Las Vegas because my dad is working at the nuclear installation out there, and they played Purple Haze for the first time on radio at one of the FM stations. Because in the old days, you didn't have FM. You had AM, A&M, and it was usually bubblegum. Fine. Occasionally they'd play something. I heard that and I was out of my mind. I heard, excuse me, while I kiss the sky. And I'm thinking, who in the heck is that? Talking about kissing the sky. I never heard that before, but I want to do that if he's doing it. That's what I thought. I remember, and I thought the name was the Jim Beam Experience, like BEAM, like booze. And then my brother corrected me. There were two twins whose father worked at the laboratory too. Los Alamos was very small community, very well guarded, a lot of security because of all the nuclear stuff. And they had ordered a record, or they had been to England and he'd come home with the first Jimi Hendrix record. They didn't like it. They knew I had Bob Dylan, not Free Willin'. He had a lot of hits on it. It was a blue cover. Famous Bob Dylan record. So I traded him for the record. And I had a bike. I was old enough to drive, but my parents wouldn't let me. So I went to their house and they were way into goth, GOTH. They knew about all that stuff. Anyway, we went there and I brought the record home and I came to my parents' stereo. You probably had parents who did this too. Well, maybe you didn't, but my parents would listen to Montevanti and Ray Conniff singers and all that stuff. The volume never went above 2. Everything was set flat. I left it alone and the needle wouldn't play because there was so much low end on the record. So I went and got a penny and put on the needle. It didn't work. Then I think I got a nickel, which was heavier than a dime and a penny. Yeah. A quarter was too much. And we listened to the record. My brother went, holy S. Yeah. we're going to get in trouble when my parents hear this. So I hid the record under my mattress, not knowing my parents probably looked and found it. I brought it to school the next day. I was a sophomore in high school. I was 16. And they allowed you to play music in art class with Mr. Phillips. He says, "What's this? Unusual color scheme, purple and yellow cover." And I thought to myself, "It's a black thing, you dummy." He just didn't understand. Purple Haze, and it was beyond the Jimi Hendrix Experience. We put this on. Nobody said a word for the entire side of that record. And one of the straightest girls, I can't think of her name, said, "Phil, could you turn it over?" We listened to that record for 45 minutes. Nobody said a word. And I was high the whole day. I just never heard anything like that. To this day, that same thing happens to me. So Purple Haze it was one of the first things I did, just go back to that gig. I told a story of how Jimmy affected me and how it still affects me today. Classical music does that too. I listen to a lot of classical. Yeah. I spent a good 10 hours a day playing guitar, have since I was a kid. I still do. I don't have a job except playing music. And so you can imagine my surprise when I called. Supposedly, I owe $6,400 to Warner Brothers to make up for the royalties that they advanced me. I got a very small advance. And I got double that advance when I got signed to A&M. And they tell me that I owe $42,000, but I have 81 records. A good share of them have gone gold and platinum many times. How could you owe that when you have just one platinum record? And I'll mention a couple in particular. I wrote Ace Frehley's biggest single. Kiss had never had this. And Gene had asked me to play with the band, but I was so snobby, I refused. I was really not smart. I would have had millions of dollars by now, but they didn't play very well. Gene can't even play bass. He doesn't play bass on his own records. And Ace, I'm not saying this to be disrespectful. It takes a lot to record. Jimmy Haslip played on a lot of their records. So I wrote a song called Trouble Walking, which his biggest single. And it was the name of his record. And everybody went nuts. I mean, everybody. And I had that typical, all the heavy metal guitar players know that song. Anyway, just rips your head off. And of course it would, because I'm doing it.
Yeah.
One of the tricks is not to turn your guitar up to 10, because the amps today, they compress the sound. And if you let it breathe, and since I play without a pick, go on, you guys and girls, a lot of great girl players, I should mention, a lot of great girls who have more delicacy in their playing than the guys do. And they know how to play a melody. Yeah. Not used to seeing a blonde with a great figure playing guitar. She's not even aware that she's got it going on, but she sounds like a goddess playing. And that just is not common. Yeah. There was a guitarist I was a fan of, still am today, April Lawton. She was a transgender girl that became a girl and played. And she played with Mitch Mitchell in a band, and they had a record deal on, I think, RCA. Very good band, great songs, but it was hard to get past the change. I have an opinion about that, but it's not important for me to express it.
Let me ask you this question then. I made the mistake of thinking that Manic Depression was your original title. You played it like it was yours, almost like Luther Vandross does when he does a cover, and you think,
yes, you're right.
But what about the song, another one of yours that really moved me was Blessing in Disguise?
That's mine. And one of the guy, John Durrell, wrote it with me. He's an older songwriter that wrote a lot of songs for the Ventures. And he was in a band called West Coast, big song in the 60s. I don't think he got cheated, but not like me. Anyway, one day I had this melody. He said, "Phil, life's a lesson, so hard to learn. You can love the fire, but hate the burn. It's always pain that teaches us." And I've just forgotten the rest of the song. If you close your eyes, it's a blessing in disguise. Basically, the premise of the song says, whatever happens, if you begin to look at the upside, that's what it becomes. I don't know why that's true. And I'm not mad at God, but you should have made this a better place. Who needs to go to school with all this heartache? In my opinion, maybe I don't know anything. But I played that in Hunt.
It's interesting to read the book of Job.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because you know, you do when you do go through suffering or tragedy or whatever the trial of the day is, and then you look at it from God's perspective, it's hard to be angry with him, even though the suffering was real. You can't discount that. The suffering was real, but it's just amazing. And you've told me about some of the medical issues that you've been through, and I'm sure back in the rearview mirror, you say, wow, that there was a blessing in disguise, even though it was hardcore.
In many ways. Listen, my girl told me this too. Nobody really knows this, but this last Saturday or last Sunday, I'm walking with my dog named Dada, help me. Oh, she's in the next room. I'm trying to find blessing in disguise because I'm going to read you a piece of this and you're going to go, Phil. I was attacked by an 80-pound pit bull to defend my girl and my dog. And we got in thick of it. He just bit the blankety blank out of me. And I didn't give up. Oh, here it is. I'm sitting here. Can you see me okay? I didn't need to be so close. No anyway, I protected my dog. I don't think I did a very good job, but my girl says I did. She's an extraordinary blonde, 5'9", body of doom, brain like Einstein, medical person that was, you know, that basically worked in emergency rooms all over the world. And we met about 10 years ago. Quick little story about that, and I'll get this lyric. So if you guys are having trouble with girls, you don't want to settle. You got to be really smart, because being really smart is really sexy. Get me? Yeah. And of course they can have, you'll go way past the body parts, because you want to be around someone that goes, you and me, pal. Absolutely. I'm not going anywhere without you. And that's what she, anyway, I got a phone, I got a message. Will you call me? And I thought, I wonder who this is. It was on Facebook. So I did. She wouldn't answer. I called back again. And finally, this voice picks up the phone, and she sounds like Marilyn Monroe singing Happy Birthday to President Kennedy. If you're anything like me, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And she says hello and who she is and where she worked, describes herself. And I went, oh boy. She goes, listen, I got a plane ticket too. And I said, oh, you like to travel? She said, yeah, I'm coming to see you. And I thought, oh my God, when are you planning to do this? Well, I come today if you said it was okay, because she was in Northern California. And she admitted that she'd been watching me for about 2.5 years. I'm the right kind of girl for you. I'm tall. I got all the right equipment, and I'm really smart. And I thought, all right, come on. So the next day I go meet her in Nashville. And I see this girl with a pair of strappy heels and a little short plaid, you know, stripper skirt. And I'm looking at her going, I'm in deep caca. I'm sorry. She says, yes, you are. Take me home and take me to get something to eat, and never left. Wow. Anyway, here's blessing in disguise. Yeah. It says, life's a lesson so hard to learn. You can love the fire, but hate the burn. It's always pain that teaches us, when all your dreams have passed you by, and all those schemes that never fly. But all these things can be a blessing in disguise. Now, this whole world is give and take. You can rest assured there are no mistakes. God only knows what you deserve. It seems we all define our lives by all the falls that we survive. But all these things can be a blessing in disguise. No one knows how or when the journey ends. We're only here to help someone else along, to find their way back again. You'll find your way, excuse me, look towards the sky. Go on up where the eagle flies. Make love your strength and faith your friend, all the way to the bitter end. When you reach out, you're halfway there. Life's no burden when it's shared. In case you've often wondered why, when all your dreams have passed you by, but all these things can be, I believe I can see, they're all a blessing in disguise. I've played that in well over 100 churches worldwide, with almost every minister saying to me, I wish I could write a sermon like that. I said, well, you can use this recording. And I remember it's on my record. It's on Imagine This. And a lot of fun. I do play it acoustically, but this is electric.
Yeah.
And it was really something for me to do. It's been one of my most requested songs. I didn't write this, it wrote me.
Yeah.
And the lyricist told me the same thing too, John Durrell. He goes, Phil, you fixed a couple of lyrics for me. I said, no, I didn't. You did your part. We split the song 50-50. It came from me. And the lyric more or less came from me. I had to fix a few things because, you know, phrasing is real important. Ladies and gentlemen, you guitar players, phrasing is the most important thing you'll do. Remember, it's what you leave out. Right. No one cares how fast you play. Right. Do you care how fast it is when you make love? I do. I want it to go slow because I don't want it to end. You know what I mean? And kindness doesn't go fast. It just shows up in your face, and it's like the best chocolate cookie you ever had in your life, going like your mom used to make, or better yet, your grandma. Yeah. I'm making these allegories because they're important. So maybe this will influence somebody. I'm sorry, I proselytized too much. Forgive me.
No, you actually brought us to the place we should be, and that's me thanking you for spending such wonderful time with us and dropping so many gems of wisdom, which you have done. And I absolutely appreciate it. I am grateful to have met you and to hear all of the amazing stories, and I am certain that this won't be our last conversation.
I promise you it won't. Listen, I know you. You're a brother in arms.
Yeah.
Everybody there, if I said anything disturbing, my apologies, but not really, because you need to be waking up. Oh, Stu, I get it every day. My girl reminds me of that often.
That's right.
I have one other thing to tell you.
Sure.
I'm really happy that you're doing this.
Thank you.
There is something about you that's beyond succinct. It's just huge.
Thank you.
What an honor to talk to someone like you. And to talk to you personally. We'll be friends forever. You belong to me, Bubby. I just think you're fantastic. And for everyone out there, I wish you the kind of success that you can barely dream about. It's within your grasp. All you got to do is let go and let God. That's the real secret.
That's right.
That's right. Music, you can find me on YouTube. Just look up Phil Brown, Apaches from Paris, the way it's spelled. A lot of live stuff out there. And there's a lot of stuff out there where I play guitar electrically and sing. My girl filmed me and a lot of tunes. I had this new record called The Right Amount of Wrong. It's not out yet. And I always thought that was kind of a reflective thing. But these two guys, three other black gentlemen, never have I been with a band like this. I never thought I would be included like this. And Ricky told me something, because I told him something. You're the closest thing to Hendrix that I'm ever going to be, because he's a Hendrix. Cousin or not, plays his little tail off, sings his little tail off. He goes, show me what we're doing. I said, well, you never had anyone help you. So now I'm doing this because I can, not because I want to. I can. That's a whole difference. Think about what you really want. He's the same age I am. He's 71, a few months younger. So we're the same. So we're putting this 2-guitar thing together with this drummer and this bass player who have this incredible history, and that they've accepted me is, well, I guess there's a little insecurity in all of us. Mine is that I won't be good enough. That's my insecurity. I learned that when I was a kid. I was adopted a couple of times. I just never knew where I came from. My girl this morning, and I'll shut up, she says, the thing about you, you're always looking for the upside. And you may not think you're on it, but from where I sit, you're the biggest thing I know. And of course, I dun. And she laughs. And I just adore her. Finest, think about the best you want. Don't settle. Both you boys and girls playing guitar, give it your best shot. And Phil Brown is my name. And thank you for letting me have a few minutes of your time.
Absolutely. Phil Brown, the entree musician, the guitar playing entree musician, Jerry B. I am the entree musician, but you know what's important? So are you. Look Phil Brown up online. We have his information at the top of the screen. You're going to appreciate every song you hear. I guarantee it. Peace and blessings to you, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, guys. God bless you.